Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend. We're your hosts. I'm Rick Watson.
Hi, it's Jessica Lisewski. Some people call me Jess, some people call me Jessica. I'm still having an identity crisis. But,
Ah,
we're here. We're two voices in retail, just as confused as you are, and we're just slightly better at pretending we're not.
yeah, exactly. Every week we break down the news in retail technology, e-commerce news, from supply chains on strike to CEOs on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, you just got to think of us as your crash course in chaos management minus the MBA debt.
It's it's a challenge. Hey, the Cowboys are 1-1.
Hey, look at that. Brandon
This
Aubrey
is
is my hero. So let him cook. He's just got to go do his thing.
let Brandon cook. I am
Like,
just working slowly through the Netflix documentary and
oh,
realizing more than anyone why Jerry destroys everything he touches.
it gives you a lot of insight. And it's a 3-letter word. Starts with an E, ends with an O.
Barry Switzer? I don't understand.
Yeah, no. I don't think that was the problem. The White House might have been a little bit of the problem, but I think it's the ego. The ego is always
Yes.
in the way.
Correct.
Yeah. So, who brings us this fine program this week, Rick?
Yeah, I'm wanted to let you guys in on an event I'm going to be at next week, Rhythm Live. If you want to check it out in New York City, September 25th in New York, October 9th in London. It's one day of
Wow.
insights in both areas, big brands, future of e-commerce, marketplaces, dropship. Get the details at www.rhythm.com/NYC. That's RITHUM.
That's going to be a great event. And
Yeah.
are you traveling across the pond or
I'm
who's
not.
going to
Our
represent?
esteemed producer, Vinny O'Brien, will be there with Nike on stage. So if
Wow.
you're going to be in London soon, October 9th, definitely be there. I'm going to be on stage with Belk and Macy's.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
So it should be super cool talking about marketplaces, retail, what the heck is going on in the world. So thanks to Rhythm for inviting me to the event and looking forward to seeing a lot of old friends there.
That's great. Will you break out the lederhosen or the sequin jacket? I think that's really what the people want to know.
Sequin jacket and wig.
Oh, all right. Yes. Yes. So I'm guessing Belk nor Macy's are sponsoring your
No,
wardrobe. Okay.
no.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to get into the headline hangover. If you've not been following, you're missing out because each week Rick and I try to stump each other on the headlines by guessing a word that's blanked out. I'm pretty sure I'm winning at this point because, I don't lose. But, we'll see. We'll see if Rick can make his little comeback tour today.
Awesome. So we're back to our old friends at Rent the Runway. They say their consumer CX, consumer experience efforts are paying off. The financials, blank.
The financials aren't paying off. The financials aren't showing it. There was probably a bit catchier headline, but
Yeah,
Rosie.
our producer is just making it too easy. He said this is dumbed down. I didn't realize we're at this level. So Rent the Runway financials aren't as rosy. So it looks like active. So here are a few stats that I have.
Okay.
Active subscribers increased 13.4% year over year to 146,000 active subscribers in the second quarter. Retention improved. So they're more, they're adding more subscribers and they're staying. However, revenue only grew 2.5% and gross profit decreased 25%. I don't know about you. I think that's the wrong direction.
Yeah.
They do have, I personally think that some of this is due to competition. Sites like Newly are doing quite well.
Yes.
And is Run the Runway kind of like that category creator that
Yeah.
was disrupted by the ones that came behind it, Jess?
I think so. We've talked about Newly on this show. They are doing extremely well. They seem to continue to grow customers. month over month, year over year. They have very strong retention as well. And I think they've figured out the logistics, and they have the benefit of brands like, Urban, Anthro, Free People really powering that. Whereas Rent the Runway has to continue to curate these brands. They don't own the brands. So their wholesale and their whole business structure looks entirely different, right? Where you can kind of move inventory between the brands and between Nuuly, and ultimately you've got a place that now they can offload inventory, right? They're offloading things that are rented, but they're offloading inventory that may be stuck in stores and hasn't moved as well. So it is pretty interesting to see the dynamics at play here. And I don't know. I mean, I was a Rent the Runway customer, Nuuly girl now. So yeah, I think it's a little tough for them.
Yeah, I think ultimately they're going to get acquired by someone. The question exactly is who. They do have a lot of consumer relationships. Many of them don't stay around forever. Who would be the owner of this? Or would it just be kind of a Chapter 11, Chapter 22 situation?
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be some place they land. The question is, who wants to own the largest dry cleaner in the world?
eBay?
Maybe. It sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm up. So Amazon CEO making headlines says the company is reducing which is anathema to innovation.
I love it. I'm going to get this one, Jess.
Okay.
Reducing bureaucracy.
Gosh, you're so good, Rick.
I'm going to crush this one.
I know. So here we go. Let me set the stage for you. You're an Amazon employee. You're sitting through another Zoom call. 10 managers are having to sign off whether or not you can expense this $40, which let's be real, it's probably a $3 HDMI cable coming from somewhere in China. Andy Jassy pops up in the all hands and says, it's enough is enough. Guys, we're going back to being a startup.
Yeah.
You probably hit the reverse because this is the company that delivers everything from toilet paper to treadmills in 2 hours. They have over 1.5 million employees, warehouses that could swallow up the state of Rhode Island. And they want to be a startup again. They're creating a bureaucracy mailbox where employees can email about anonymously every dumb, redundant process. So far, 1,500 complaints filed, about 455 rules already been nuked. Yeah. Somewhere in Seattle, the middle managers lost like their favorite Excel tracker. Layers are being trimmed, fewer managers, more doers. We call this lean. Lean and mean. There's a new mandate. The ratio of individual contributors to bosses. Day one culture's back, Rick. What do you think?
Day one, yeah. So I listened to the keynote. It was like a fireside chat between Dharmesh Shah, who's the head of all the seller services at Amazon Accelerate event in the last week, and he interviewed Andy Jassy. Andy is a talker, unlike Jeff, who he's sort of practice economy. Andy just loves hear himself speak, which to me doesn't bode well for reducing bureaucracy if you just sort of keep talking forever.
Sure.
He did say, look, he repeated a lot of the same things he's been talking about for the past 6 months. The question is, are they going to work? They have really grown profit the past couple of years, especially on the backs of doubling their logistics infrastructure in COVID. That was kind of the last act from Jess. Catch all, I'm going to double all my logistics expenses, see if you can make a profit from here on. And they did.
Right.
So I think the biggest challenge for them is saying it's day one when it's actually day 2 or 3. It just doesn't make sense. Why not just say it's day 2 and we're a different company now, but we can still be just as focused on the customer. We're a little bit bigger. We're not quite as fast, but we're still focused on speed. And so just be honest with the people. That's all I'm saying. Yeah,
I agree. It's kind of hard to say you're done with bureaucracy and you're hanging with Roger Goodell, in the box on Prime.
Was Jerry Jones in there?
He was sick burn. No, he was not. So I think it is a little bit of an oxymoron in the current state. I think you can still push for innovation, but let's just call this what it is, and it's trimming cost, and it's trying to continue to push every thread of profitability in different ways. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
I think meetings. We no longer have 2 pizza meetings. David has some interesting things. So actually, there's like 27 pizza meetings now.
Yes. Yes. So I guess we'll see if Amazon really can live into this startup swagger that they're promising. More to come.
All signs point to no. All right.
Yeah.
Next, we have holiday sales predictions vary, but one thing is clear: a blank will be a winner.
One thing is clear: blank will be the winner. The consumer.
You could have taken a clue from that. Come on, Jess. This is like a bump set whiff.
It's been a week, guys. It's been a week.
There's a 2-letter word right on the screen, and just like the Cowboys, you missed. Actually you made the kick last week, but
we did make the kick. 2 kicks.
Let's talk about what's going to happen. There's some pessimistic analysts and there's some like average analysts. And so the pessimistic side says that Gen Z has reported that they're going to reduce their spending by 25%, and they're going to rely on resale. They're also saying that, it's going to be slightly down, maybe off the last 10-year pace, but that 10-year pace includes COVID. So it's a little bit tough. Still tough comps over that time frame.
Yep.
Deloitte, I've looked at predictions from Deloitte, Salesforce, Bain. They all seem to put retail in the like 3 to 4% growth range and e-commerce in the 7 to 9% range. All of them seem to cluster around those things. Everyone seems to agree that AI is going to increase a huge amount. Salesforce said that 45% of respondents in their surveys are going to be using AI for shopping this year. Earlier this year, that number has already doubled to like 90% of people responded. So AI gonna AI. And
AI gonna AI. I'm still standing behind my answer. The consumer will be the winner. Yes, just because deals are gonna get earlier. You got people worried about tariffs, and retailers' margins are going to be the losers, and consumers are going to be the winners. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Got it. I love it.
Okay. All right. We're going to round out YouTube with your enterprise Shopify customer, Mr. Beast tier on the right. YouTube says it has paid creators more than what over the last 4 years?
I saw this article. 20 billion?
No, I'm sorry. No. 100, Rick.
Okay.
We're in a new era. This is the creator era. The creator economy is really building now, according to YouTube, on their backbone. It's not just vanity, it's income. People are, everyone from like, you got the Mr. Beast of the world to, the bone broth woman who ultimately is, the next expert on health. Ultimately, they're dropping what almost feels surreal. It's $100 billion to creators, artists, and media companies. 4 years of checks going out to people who feel like that they're reshaping what content is all about. What's really fueling the changes here is TV. That's a big part of the story. Channels earning 6 figures from just ad revenue tied to TV. You've got YouTube TV now has jumped 45% year over year. And it's really turning into this holistic platform strategy. So we've got sustainability versus volatility. YouTube's paid out a lot. Many creators, though, are grappling with their unpredictability. The algorithm changes, revenue swings, policy shifts. They're complaining that the payouts aren't always as steady or predictable. And, scale matters, as you know, Rick, the name of the game. The more followers you have, the more you're earning.
That's right.
And that's not really easy for everyone. So, what's your take on this whole creator economy powered in the YouTube zone?
Yeah, I mean, I think YouTube is it's a monster.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to continue to grow. Short form video has taken over the world. Shorts have really grown a ton as YouTube has started sort of copying the TikTok formula. They're doing a great job at it. They have a lot of platforms, Google TV. I mean, speaking of like connected ad platforms, I was watching Thursday Night Football last night, and it seems like every ad now has a button. Like I have
Yeah.
a Google set top that's I think the Google OS on Sony, and every ad through Prime now says like send this thing to your phone. So like download an app or click on a
Yep.
link, and so you really just have to hit one button on your remote, and now it's on your now it's on your phone, and so the world is, I think, getting super interesting from an ad format point of view, and I think particularly as we get into generative AI, that will keep changing too. So I'm excited about creators. Back to YouTube a little bit, not going anywhere, and I think brands know it, and I can keep investing in the creator economy, and which is actually a good preview to our show next week when we
Yeah.
have Kristen Wiley from Statosphere on.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually thinking that there's kind of like two foreshadowings here for the Watson weekend. One being what's happening in this creator economy, which we're talking about with Kristen, and then a conversation that will air in a couple of weeks with Kiri Masters on AI, right? And
Mhm.
how that's changing the advertising landscape in retail media specifically. So there is more to unpack here. I think YouTube, I'm with you, they're going to keep investing in AI. They've already said that. And then there's going to be more incentives to reach audiences on TVs, devices, connected TV. I think the next thing we're just waiting on is, will YouTube start producing, their own shows, their own content, and really kind of jumping into some of the waters that like Hulu and Netflix have been able to
Yeah.
benefit from.
No, it's good. So I appreciate everyone hanging on for the headline hangover. We are this is a special segment for us where I get to dunk on Jess, or this week maybe she dunks on me.
Yeah, we're going toe to toe here.
Yeah.
But when we talk about style, when we talk about one of the sharpest minds in retail,
Mm.
our next guest is really what comes to mind. David Katz has been so impressive. And so I know you had a conversation with him recently, Rick, and would love to have you introduce that to our guest or to our audience.
Yeah, this is gonna be fantastic. David Katz, he's really sui generis in the retail world. You like that word?
Mm.
He's a fashion insider, data scientist, self-described alchemist of retail. So he is the EVP and CMO at Randa Apparel and Accessories. He steers marketing and growth for 25 brands, both owned and sort of like licensee. Calvin Klein, from Hagar, Calvin Klein, Levi's, Tommy Hilfiger, Columbia, Haan, and Dickies, across thousands of global retail and digital touch points. So he has degrees in neuroscience and business from Tufts and Harvard. And so he knows exactly what makes Pavlov's dog salivate and what makes people buy. And so I'm excited to have you hear this conversation. It's super interesting and informative. Hello, and welcome to the Watson Weekend. I'm here with David Katz, who's the EVP and CMO at Randa Apparel and Accessories, which is a billion-dollar business. Welcome to the show, David.
Hey, Rick, it is a pleasure to be on the show and to be on this side of the microphone instead of just listening to you while I'm running through the park or whatever. So I appreciate the invite and look forward to our discussion.
I'm honored to count you as a listener. Let me rattle off a few stats, just sort of in praise of our guest here. Randa is a billion-dollar business. Owns or works with 35 different brands. They own Hagar, which is the largest non-denim pants brand in North America. They own Tribal Sportswear. Own Moss Brothers. joint venture and manufacture one of the largest belt factories in the world. Anything I missed?
No, I think you hit a lot of the highlights, and I think I'm glad you added that color because most of your listeners don't know the name Randa, but they're all wearing and own some of the products that we manufacture and distribute. Because the brands, you said 35 brands, include things like Calvin Klein and Levi Strauss and Tommy Hilfiger and Haan, Williams and Dickies, Columbia Sportswear, and obviously 30 others. And so we do that globally. And we're making their men's belts and wallets, women's accessories and women's belts, headwear, cold weather. We didn't discuss this earlier, Rick, but recently, within the last year, we bought the totes and isotoner business. So we are the largest umbrella supplier. We're the one of the largest glove and slipper suppliers. We did that deal as a joint venture with marquee brands. So your umbrellas, your gloves, your slippers, your belt, your wallet, and your neckwear, which is where we started, by the way, selling ties. They're probably made by us.
And is it safe to say that what percentage of the business is as a licensee to another brand versus your own label?
That's a great question. At this point, probably about half is licensed and half are own brands.
Got it.
And it's important to us to keep a balance there. We don't want too much concentration risk. And I certainly think in today's world, with the shift in consumer spending that we're seeing, we were a department store centric business. And by department stores, I define those as like multi-branded mid-market retailers, right? Across the world. I mean, Debenhams and John Lewis in the UK and Target and Meijer and David Jones in Australia and Sears in Liverpool and Mexico, et cetera, and the Hudson Bay. May they sort of rest in peace.
Yeah,
what happens in Canada, right? And when I look at all those, that was concentration risk. And today, that's still department stores, multi-branded mid-tier stores are a huge business, but they're not growing as a sector and as a segment. Right. And so, you have to look at where, I forget who said this, but if it was a bank robber who said, why do you keep robbing banks? And the answer was, it's where the money is.
Correct.
It's like, you got to follow the money here and follow the consumer. Yeah.
I love this start to the podcast because we're talking about a time where it feels like either a consumer has been robbed or retail has been robbed, but we're in a very disruptive time, both scary and exciting, especially for someone who's been in the business so long. Reinvention is required. Why don't you set the stage for we were going back before the podcast and we have some overlap when I was at Channel Advisor and you were working with GSI for some of your brands. And so that's super exciting to remember and hear about, but set the stage for how is this time different than other 5-year periods that you've lived through?
I think we've seen a lot of disruption. Disruption is evolution. It's part of what retail's done from general stores and merchants, right, turn of the century to where we are today. So it's not new that things are changing. Things are changing at a faster pace and at a larger scale and in less predictable ways, I think, than ever before. And some of that is technology and information flow. The flow of information and the use of technology enables disruption at a remarkable scale, right, in speed. So I think what we're seeing is very fast major changes. The erosion of the growth of department stores has been happening, and Rick, you can probably nail the dates better than I can, but for decades, right? Certainly more than 15 years, we've seen a decline in the growth rate, right? And certainly a decline in the total scale. So that's not new. It's just happening much faster because of e-commerce and because of social selling and because of the price wars with off-price retailers and their growth and what Walmart can now deliver and Amazon. But the acceleration of that is big. Now, customers still, quite a few of them at scale, want to shop in mortar and brick stores. That's not going away.
Right.
But the way they deal with those stores, the expectations they have for the brands, the products, the stores, the service levels are the awareness level this average consumer has, there is no average consumer, but of the hundreds of millions of consumers that we're dealing with, their knowledge of what's available to them, the fact that they can command retailers and brands to deliver what they want is very different than it used to be. So I think that's part of the disruption and shift that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. You say just the knowledge. Consumers are so smart, and your job is to help them be smarter. And I think that's one of your jobs. And it feels like the companies that forgot that are really the ones that you see slowly failing.
Yeah, I never underestimate.
I don't want to mention, call out Target here because they may be one of your suppliers or retailers.
So, yeah, to that point, first, Target's an interesting story. I'm a believer and a cautious optimist that they will figure this out. There's a new regime coming in. They have scale. They have good locations. They've had a couple of bumps, but I think that they're going to be okay. So we'll see what happens. But I love all of our children equally. Not that they're our children, maybe I'm theirs, but we're the largest supplier in most of our categories at Target and Walmart, but also at Nordstrom and at Tractor Supply and at Costco and at Macy's and Penny and Kohl's and Ross stores in Burlington, and so we hit all of those. We have very big market share in most of our classifications.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the pulse and the change in the tide as it affects these different channels.
Yeah. So let's start, I guess, at that point, which is this year started out very bullish and then it quickly shifted, I think. And you could call it tariffs, you could call it regime change, you could just call it consumer. Everyone has a different explanation. But at the end of the day, a number of retailers have abandoned their forecasts. Mm-hmm. Some haven't. Walmart just raised theirs just a few days ago. What does that tell us in the market?
I think it tells us that there's an incredibly high degree of uncertainty and volatility, right? And to put any form of forecast in an incredibly volatile, disruptive environment is challenging. So I think what we're seeing is somewhat unprecedented volatility, and just this charting of the unknown. Certainly, tariffs, whether you're in favor or against them, are disruptive and will change the nature of price points, brands, and retailers. And there will be winners and losers as they navigate that change. One of the biggest challenges for manufacturers, supplier, importer, vendors, brands, and retailers is trying to determine when you buy a product today, when you place a purchase order today, that is going to be imported. A lot of it, certainly in the fashion and retail business we're dealing with, a lot is going to be imported. We may grow an internal domestic production in the United States, but that's not going to happen quickly. Right. So a lot of this product's going to be imported. You buy it today, it's going to, depending upon your product category and your supply chain, it's going to arrive fastest maybe 90 days or 60 days in some cases, normally 90 plus, to a year from now. Mm-hmm. But we don't know what the cost of those goods are going to be on a landed basis, right? Week to week. And so how do you model how much you buy, what features and benefits you're going to put in the product, what price you're going to be selling them at, becomes a high degree of uncertainty. And so I think what you're dealing with, to your question of why aren't we putting out some of the traditional models that we would share, right, and forecasts, is this uncertainty factor.
Yeah, I do believe that, on the retailer side, the ones that seem to be doing well seem to have this sort of first party, third party model where they can buy a bunch, but then not buy some things. Do you see that playing out in the market more now?
Yeah, I think that's one of the factors. I think there are also models where price elasticity is different for some retailers and or brands than others. I think margins are different for some. And so ultimately, if there's going to be an increase in a tariff, and that's an increase in cost. And yes, it will affect the country of manufacture. The higher the tariff, the fewer goods we're going to be buying from them, because if there are better alternatives, we'll go to alternatives. That's not an easy thing to do, and I'd love to get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But certainly that's going to happen. But do you have a brand and a retail price point where your margins are such that you, as an importer or a retailer, will absorb that price increase? Are your margins so tight you're passing it all to the consumer? Will the manufacturer absorb some? Is that going to be shared across manufacturer and vendor and retailer and consumer? Those factors are there. And I think some of the companies that we deal with put the tactics of how they want to deal with import, product, tariff, cost, retail first. And they put strategy, and it's hard. Strategy is really, really hard to think differently, to think long term, versus I'm just going to change the country of origin. I'm just going to change the price. Those are tactical and can be done faster. I think it's important to keep strategy. Not everyone can play in the same arena for strategy. And on your question, Rick, I would say, for instance, if you're a company, and we're a privately held company, and we are scale, and we don't have a lot of debt, and we're profitable. So if we decide we're not going to raise prices very much, we're going to lose profit margin. We're going to lose contribution margin, but we might gain market share over time because we didn't raise it, and we can afford that. And I don't have to have a quarterly earnings call. I don't have to report this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not forecasting out there. So I can do that. If you are debt constrained or cash constrained, right? If you're reporting quarterly earnings and people are really paying attention to your forecasts and your earnings calls, you may not be able to play that particular game. You have to play a different strategy. And so your tactics should be different. And I think you have to put what's the problem you're solving for? What's your ultimate goal first? And then look at things like, are you protecting profit dollars? Are you protecting profit margin percentages? Are you protecting market share? What's the consumer loyalty effects you're looking at? And then figure out your tactics.
Yeah. This is it's a little bit fascinating because we're talking somewhat about the public company retail model, which is under attack in some form or fashion. Nordstrom's just went private this year after being public for decades.
Right.
There are whispers out there on the interwebs that Target could be a take private candidate.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't figure it out. Certainly, if they don't figure it out soon, it's not outside of the realm of possible. I totally agree with your point. They've historically, I would say, meaning historically the last 15 years, great executive team, great investments, great return on capital track record. Last 3-4 years, not as much.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when they're. Do you think the public company retail model is flawed just because of the lack of flexibility and the reporting and who you're beholding to?
We can pick winners like Walmart who are publicly reporting and are doing very well with this. So it's not the exceptions prove the rules sometimes. Right?
There's only one Sam Walton, and just like there was only one Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah. Although there are other retailers that are succeeding. I'm a big fan of Hal Lawton and Tractor Supply, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm watching what they're doing, and they're reporting earnings calls, and they're winning. And I'm a big fan of Ross Stores and of Burlington and TJ's, and they're reporting, and Costco. And so I don't think it's the reporting issue. It's if you're publicly traded and you have to have growth. Right. Growth is essential, particularly for public companies. Yeah. But I think it's essential for private companies, too. You can't stand still. Right. Someone's going to come eat your lunch, if you're not moving forward.
Yeah.
So growth's essential. Are you borrowing a lot of money in that process? I think the issue we see with some of these public companies is the debt levels they've taken on. And therefore, in order to service that debt, do you reduce some of your most important value propositions to consumers? Do you lower in-store service? Is the quality of your four-wall stores less? Are you, where are you then compensating for the fact that you have all this debt? And I think that factor is more important than whether or not you're public or not.
Yeah, and I think that debt factor definitely does seem to explain a lot of the reasons why you see these sort of Chapter 22 situations where people go through multiple rounds of bankruptcies, etc. We saw it with Express. We've seen it with David's Bridal. We've seen it with
JC Penney.
JC Penney.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Sears. Sears is maybe a special case, but
well, and it's interesting. And then reinventing your model. If it's not just, are you public and do you have debt? If you're a department store and you believe, well, someone's got to reinvent that model to make it work. Right now, a lot of people are trying, and I'm hopeful that some of them will do this, but we're still using legacy department store models to a certain extent. And listen, Tony Spring's doing a good job over at Macy's, but they're shrinking in the process, right? They're closing doors, and hopefully this will help their profitability, but that's not you don't shrink your way to success. So that's not a long-term
That is definitely true.
Right. And you have Kohl's and some of the very visible struggles that they've had, although, you're talking about 1,100 stores and they've got some scale, but, not a lot of growth there. And another CEO still to be named. So we'll see what happens, when that comes in. So you look at this and can you reinvent? One of the things I model is what department store group or what retailer has shifted their business model. And it's interesting because you reminded me this, Rick, of one of the first things you talked about on today's show. The only one I can think of that truly reinvented their model that was in the department store or fashion business was basically the reinvention of Target coming out of Dayton Hudson. Right? I mean, they managed to reinvent from one model going, our future as a competitive multi-branded mid-tier department store is not going to work. Let's try this mass merchant approach. But they approached it very differently. Macy's has tried Backstage to become more off-price. But that's built inside of Macy's. When Target was invented, let's put you several miles down the road with your own financial structure, your own buying team, your own planning, right, your own CFO, and literally spin off a different business. You don't see that very often.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's fascinating. I've sometimes mused recently that is the future of Target. Clearly you have tremendous retail, tremendous supply chain infrastructure that is really second to probably only Walmart in terms of their delivery capabilities and supply chain, which is so critical. You have these own brands that are kind of trapped inside of the Target brand, which is kind of a liability a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's a double-edged sword here, right? So you're going to have a private brand. I mean, look at Kirkland inside Costco. I mean, what an incredible success story.
Amazing.
For a private brand. So you can make this work. The problem in today's world where you're not sure of your cost structure, your margins, and your inventory level, which relates to your debt, is on a private brand, you own all the goods. Right. If I sell a Levi's belt to a retailer and they forecast and they suddenly need more or they need less, I can use common inventory and ship it. I can ship some to Macy's. I can ship some to Amazon. I can ship some to Kohl's. I can ship some. Right. So they're leveraging my inventory. But if I'm making private label for Target, and our company does make some private label for them. So if I'm making Goodfellas or Cat and Jack or some of the product that's private label, they own it. And if all of a sudden they need a lot more, it's a longer supply chain. And if all of a sudden they have way too much goods, there's margin erosion or how do they deal with the cash on that? So, but when it works, they get a much bigger contribution margin. And so how do you balance that with national brands? And in the case of Target, if you buy, and I believe some of this is true, part of the appeal was the Target aesthetic appeal, right? Do you do that with national brands or with your private brands? And can you make it sexy and give it enough feature benefits? I mean, Kirkland is a really good product. That brand makes really good stuff.
Fantastic.
It's just fantastic. It's I have quite a bit.
And a lot of the Target brands are fantastic.
Yeah. No, they really are. I mean, I think the Cat and Jack and Goodfellas, which I mentioned, along with some of these are good brands. How do you manage the risk of inventory flow? And how do you manage in today's world where you're not sure what the costs are going to be? Do you play it safe and buy core product only that you can replenish? Or do you put new product and innovation in there, which is inherently riskier, but it drives new traffic into your store because people want to see something new and they want a little treasure hunt? And, how do you balance that? And that's a tricky one, right? Because I think customers replenish core online a lot, and they visit stores for newness, where they can see and touch and interact with something. I mean, that's a generalization, but it's generally true. Safe bets may win the game and let you to play longer, right? But smart gambles win championships. So where are you playing? Are you playing it safe?
But you can also strike out. Making those bets, especially if it's a big bet. I mean, it was so interesting. Target CEO and their leadership they said what you're saying just in a different way. They were like, we need more collabs. And what I heard out of that, and now that I'm reflecting on your words just now, which is like, we're not fresh enough.
Yeah.
And when you have a traffic problem, which they do, that makes sense to me.
Right.
Like, that adds up. Like,
yeah. Now, if you're in the food and drug business, and Target to a certain extent has a play there, not as much as Walmart, obviously, you do get people coming in just to refill food and drug product, right? So you do get some traffic from that. Your margin isn't huge in that business, but you get traffic, and if you have to be highly efficient to make that work. But if you're counting on a lot of customers coming in for back to school, right, and you're counting on a lot of customers coming in for fashion product and or apparel, you need some newness mixed in, and that's risky.
Right.
Right. And can you afford the risk?
Yeah, those collabs need to work.
They need to work.
And you need to not upset your consumers. And so I would love to move discussion slightly to those smart consumers we talked about before, because I don't care what side of the aisle or fence or whatever we're going to call it you're on. Target pissed off both sides.
Yeah. And certainly it's difficult to take a social position today, that there's a big risk involved in that. And I'm not saying brands shouldn't do it. Levi is one of our partners, takes a pretty high social profile on reproductive rights and gun control and, voter rights, et cetera. And they're out there. It's part of their brand identity. It's really risky to flip positions and to then try to retread something you've gone out there with. And this was certainly, in hindsight, when we look at the case study that's going to be taught on Target, it's going to look like a mistake. To be in the room at the time making those decisions, I've made plenty of bad decisions. You can always justify or rationalize. Carl Jung once said that people and leaders are not rational, but they are rationalizing. You can always rationalize why you did what you did. That doesn't make it rational. It just means you can explain it. That was a tough one for Target, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about those consumers, because I think the subcontext that this fits inside of is just the question of loyalty. Is there such thing as consumer loyalty to retail anymore? What do consumers value? What makes them loyal?
I think that's a core essential question, right? What is loyalty today? I do think there is some loyalty to retailers and to brands, but it's less than it used to be. More so, I think, to brands and products than to retailers today. I knew a lot of people, and I've worked with Ralph Lauren for a long time, who were very Ralph Lauren customers, and that's what they were going to buy, mostly for the brand, but sometimes for the retail store. It was an experience and had an identity. But some of those same friends and peers of mine now shop multiple channels. So they're shopping Costco, and they're shopping Marshalls,
and Walmart,
and they're shopping Nordstrom, and they're shopping Walmart, and they're on Amazon. Okay. And they're at the Ralph Lauren store. And so, they're going through these multiple channels for different needs at different times. And the experience and the ease of doing that is a lot different and the transparency, as we said, technology makes visibility on price, product, feature. Social selling tells you what your friends and others think of a product. So there's a lot of other options on how you shop this. I think it's a misconception to think loyalty evaporates when customers feel squeezed or challenged. I think that they become more discerning right? And not disloyal. I think that it's common to say that the biggest factor in value is price. Price is one element in the value equation. There's service, there's convenience, there's
quality,
the environment, there's
like quality. How do you define what quality is, right?
There's speed, there's curation, there's treasure hunt. I mean, all of these things are different. And sometimes it's not one customer that values each of those. The same customer may value them at different times. I mean, you go back to classic marketing, it's like, why do you pay more if somebody slices your white bread than if you buy a loaf of white bread? Because there's value to having it pre-sliced and just be able to throw it out and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich fast for your family, right? But why do I pay more for that? It doesn't even stay as fresh that way. It's like, it's because it's a value proposition, you know. The treasure hunt that Costco and some of the off-pricers are so good at used to be owned by department stores. It's not there anymore. The service level of someone helping you, and does this look good with this? By the way, I have this at home. Will this work? You know, having someone you can talk to, that's a social experience some people value highly.
Yeah.
But others don't like.
Retail is social, and I think forever will it be so. What segment of the market that values that could be a different question.
Correct. You know, one of the things you and I mentioned Hudson's Bay, and I look at Canada. If you're going to buy clothing that you need to try on, and the largest apparel retailer in Canada goes out of business, where do you go to try it? Because you don't try on clothes at Walmart, and you don't try it on at Costco, you don't try it on at some of the off-price at Winners. So where do you go when you want to try on a new outfit? And so that becomes an interesting question in this evolving retail environment.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, there are a couple of players we've worked with Reitmans in the past, and you know, they have a network of stores. They're not the scale of you know, some of these big players, but it's just interesting. Do you think that most retailers have a clear North Star for what their consumers value?
I think that the use of data is incredibly valuable and very dangerous. Okay. I think it's valuable because we do have more information about these consumers than we used to, but I think it's easy to make assumptions based on the data that are rationalizing, okay, and that kind of make sense on paper, but they don't work in the real world necessarily. You know, we did some interesting studies. So we started doing these at COVID, and we continue to do them over the last few years. Do people dress differently if they're working from home, or if they're working from the office, or if they're in a hybrid environment? And our studies, we focused at the time mostly on accessories, but we were looking at apparel as well. And what we saw, we're in the slipper business, right? We're in the belt business. We're in the headwear business, right? Suddenly, people were wearing beanies at home for a Zoom call, right? That was like, we never saw that before. Our slippers business went through the roof, not just because people were staying home. We identified a 5-mile radius for a change of behavior. So if you were going to be traveling 5 miles, if you were going to your local Starbucks or going to go shopping nearby, we made our slippers sort of indoor-outdoor. They had a little bit of tread on them. Yeah. And you could just wear your fuzzy slippers or whatever it was and go to Starbucks and wear, in essence, pajama bottoms or some very comfortable bottoms. But that only applied if you were really sticking within 5 miles. That once you got to 6 or 10 or 15 miles away, now you were putting on shoes, more traditional pants or dresses, right? You took a wallet with you if you were going 7 miles, and you put a rubber band around 3 credit cards if you were staying within 3 miles.
So interesting.
So we literally started looking at consumer behavior and how would we therefore change the way we supplied these customers with what they wanted. So, you know, I'm a big fan of the work that Clay Christensen, a professor at Harvard Business School, right, the Innovator's Dilemma and stuff, used to do. And Professor Christensen was big on this milkshake study that you may know, Rick, but it was like, why do people buy milkshakes? And data didn't give it to you. You had to really talk to customers. I think the risk of data analysis is you sit in your office and you analyze data instead of being out in the stores interacting with customers while they're actually shopping. There's nothing more valuable than that. That's a big Paco Underhill kind of thing. But you know, go out into stores. Yes, they're buying. Some of them are obviously buying from websites, and that's important too. But for multi-brand retailers that have stores, spend more time in your stores, talk to customers, watch them. Why did they touch a product and put it back, but touch another product and put it in the shopping cart? And then are they frustrated when they go through the checkout line? And how does that, just watch that. That tells you an incredible amount about your customer.
It's fascinating. I mean, this study is, I would love to just stay here for a second because data is so foundational to the opportunity and problems that exist in modern commerce anywhere.
Yeah.
Because we're told that data is oil, it's the most valuable thing. And by the way, we'll get to in a second, data is the foundation of AI.
Yeah. Yes.
Bad data is the foundation of bad AI. You're even telling me that good data could be foundation of bad decision making.
Yes. Yeah, because it's not the data; it's how you use it, and what understanding do you really get from this? I mean, yes, data makes us more productive. Use of data science is an incredible tool. It's not the only tool, and the problem is a lot of people see data as the hammer, and then everything becomes a nail, right? And it's just part of what you need to do to understand your customers and to serve them. And then at what point do you not want to listen to your customer and do something that they don't know they want? I mean, that's, you mentioned Stephen Jobs.
Yeah.
Right? It's nobody asked for a personal computer. They didn't exist. Nobody wanted a car. They wanted faster horses that cost less to manage. And so at what point do you say, I have something I think you're going to want, you just don't know you want it right now? And data's not really going to help you with some of that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But if data isn't help you, what do you rely on? You still need to experiment. Experiments need metrics. And so data is in there somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. Well, go back to before listen, we always use data. We just didn't call it data, right? So, I mean, if you go back to the turn of the century and you had a small mercantile store or dry goods store, your customers came in. Sometimes you kept a ledger. You knew what they bought before. Did they pay their bills on time? Did they have a new baby in the family? So maybe you should be stocking more milk or some other products for them than you used to, and you did one-to-one marketing. I know this family. I know what they need, and I'm going to serve them. In theory, data helps us, but it's not the same experience as that family walking into your store and having a conversation and realizing, oh, they bought more milk, but it wasn't because they had that. They got a litter of 6 kittens, right? I mean, so the data's not always going to tell you that.
Right. That's fascinating. It's totally true. And I think we're kind of getting to a point about how do you listen to your customers? Because look, humans are, in the battle for anything, humans seem to be losing. And so whatever it is, however you describe it, whether it's in factories, on the retail show floor, at the checkout lines, humans are losing.
Amazon just announced that they now have an equal number of robots to humans in their
Exactly. So humans are losing. Let's take that as a given for a moment, even though there might be some nuance to it. You can't employ humans in stores to listen to customers. What do you do instead?
Well, I mean, you certainly have sensor devices that are now watching and listening to customers in different ways, right? I mean, certainly you see this instant checkout methodology that a few companies and Amazon has put out there. And there are values. I mean, I walked into a Burberry store in London and they kind of scanned and asked a little bit, but they knew what size, what credit cards, other purchases I had made. A matching product came out. They said, by the way, we can just deliver this to your hotel room and charge the same credit card you usually use without my ever reaching into my wallet, right? So some of that's data driven. Some of it's really good observation because the sales person who serviced me in New York had annotated certain things about me that were available to the sales team in London, right?
That seems rare on its own.
Right. Well, and listen, that's a luxury retailer with a lot of margin and a very different, kind of go-to-market strategy. So you've got some of that, but I don't know that we have it. I mean, listen, I am an early adopter, deep user of artificial intelligence in lots of ways, right? I also know that I don't like the term hallucination. It uses data or recommends and opines on data incorrectly quite often. right? So you've got to look at that. So can these new tools, these new sensors, AI now, if you give it the right to use your phone and your camera and your microphone, sees and hears, not just typing, right? I mean, you've seen the demo. I mean, I can open my refrigerator, point my phone into the refrigerator, the camera, and ask, what can I make with this?
Yeah.
Right. And it's crazy. It's great.
Right.
But that doesn't beat a human observing another human for emotional behavior and what things really mean and why they're doing or talking to them. Right. And so I think that, I think AI is a better retail analyst than the average retail analyst. But it's not as good as the best. I think AI is a better writer than an average writer. But it's at least in terms of technical skills and grammar and cadence and that stuff. But it's not better than the best. I have family members who are musicians who go, yeah, it's doing this, kind of very basic derivative music that it's creating, but it's not really original. It kind of sounds mediocre and it's just not that fresh. And I went, you mean like 99% of the stuff I listen to on Spotify?
Totally.
Right. So I think it's going to be good. It's going to be a really helpful tool, but it's not going to make you great. At least not yet.
Yeah. And clearly listening to customers the consumer changes their mind.
Yeah.
All the time. And so I guess internally at Randa, like, how do you think about a world where consumers are changing their mind? Do you build that into your models? How does that?
This is a read and react test, test, measure, optimize. How fast can you do that? How quickly? I mean, one of the things we were looking at over the last couple of years is in our women's accessories businesses, such as women's belts and hats. Let's take those two things. We saw these very odd spikes of all of a sudden certain colors and rhinestones appearing in certain regions and cities and then disappearing. Now, this is a no duh kind of in hindsight, but it mirrored and attracted the Taylor Swift concert appearances. Right? So that when she was appearing, the kinds of things that she was wearing and that her fans wore would spike for a week or so before, during, and after. And the question is, if that's happening without a lot of notice, how do you respond to that? But if you know what the concert tour schedule is, we could shift inventory and get ahead of that, right? And so you can kind of respond faster. The other problem, though, to your point, Rick, is customers can't always articulate what they really want. It's not that they're misrepresenting or lying, okay? It's that it's hard to explain. Do you care about, protecting the environment, environmental waste, right? The incredible piles of debris and energy that's wasted in creating certain types of garments and other products. Yes, I care. Great. So that's a real data point. I absolutely believe they care. But if you charge them $3 more for the unit, they don't buy it. Now, it's not because they're just they're sticklers for that. It's the actual response in the real world versus the emotional response to the question that you have. And that's a really basic kind of statement. Yeah. But it's not that they're misrepresenting. It's that watching what really happens isn't as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, self-reported behavior is questionable at best.
Well, sentiment data versus POS data, right? Which is
speaking about rationalization.
Yeah,
people are able to rationalize away their behavior. I'm like, oh, everyone in the world knows what two things do you need to do if you're going to lose weight. I need to eat better and I exercise.
Right.
Why am I not going to work out this week? Well, because my friend's coming in town and I don't have time. Or I'm doing it next week. And so you're like pre-counting the fact that you're going to work out next week as part of your rationalization.
For sure. Yeah. And welcome to constantly renewed gym memberships that don't get used very often, which is why, you can overbook a gym.
It's a great business.
It's until it's
not a great business, but
until it isn't. Yeah.
It could be.
And that's, one of the things that reminds me of, Rick, is there are business models, there are retail channels that, like, it's easy to say, well, off price is growing. It's just, that's going to win. And department stores are more challenged. But we can list department stores, Dillard's, okay, Nordstrom Rack more than Nordstrom, but that are winning, okay, that are kind of getting it right. And I can list off-pricers, Tuesday Morning and a bunch of others, and some of the Dollar General that are failing. So it's not the channel. It's, you've got to have leadership and the systems and the debt levels and the fine, right? You have to have all of these things.
It kind of appears to me, especially in these different formats, there are a couple of one, maybe two leaders. Yeah. Even if you look at sort of Costco, Sam's isn't losing, has a benefit of being part of Walmart, but there's like, it's very hard to name 3 or 4 in a concept that are winning.
Yeah, well, early mover advantages in scale, right? It's hard once you've got, I mean, how do you compete with Amazon in their specific model, right? Now you could argue that Walmart's starting to get that kind of delivery mechanism, right? And they're incredibly efficient at it. Somewhat different models, clearly, right? But so that game's not over. But how many other companies can do that at scale?
Very, very, very few.
Yeah. So it's and the other thing we're seeing is these new technologies, particularly AI and a few others, the amount of capital required in CapEx to lead is prohibitive for all but a handful of players. Like, if you're going to build a new AI model and you're not Microsoft or OpenAI, we're talking billions and billions of dollars. This is not a game most people can even play. This is a handful of companies and a handful of countries. Totally. And that's it.
I totally agree with you. This is why I think all this hype, I mean, I'm a bear on Perplexity, for the record. And it's because they don't have $1 trillion to spend.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you see their CEO, God bless him, he's playing a PR game. He's like, we're going to buy Chrome and this and that. And they get it in the news and they'll grab a few.
And Sam Altman says that they'll come up with a browser at OpenAI shortly. And what happens to Perplexity then?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't, this is an expensive game.
So expensive.
Yeah.
So expensive. But I think the subtext of all of this, we're in a world where there's so much data, consumers are changing. You can't plan quarter to quarter anymore. You're retracting your forecasts. You're in charge of strategy. David
ultimately,
Katz.
you've got.
What does strategy mean?
Yeah, well,
today, how would you define strategy as we sit here today?
Yeah. I'm not solely in charge of strategy here. I have a bunch of very smart people at Randa who lead our strategy initiatives, and I participate with them. I think thinking, that there are several cultures that will not make major decisions unless they include how will this affect 3 generations from now, or 4 or 5, right? And there are a bunch of companies that kind of use a philosophy like that. And Randa's been around for 115 years. We started selling, 2 brothers. So listen, I think this is a true story. If it wasn't, I'd love to make it up as an origin story. But 2 brothers selling ties that they bought from New Jersey and then brought over to Manhattan and sold from a push cart on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, right? And the world keeps changing. And it was a family. By the way, the family, we're a family-owned business. It's the same family 115 years later, right? Just the exact, and they're always thinking a couple of generations out. What will be the longer term? Yes, we have to keep the business successful for the next year and the year after. But what's the long-term effect? Where do we need to be? And if you see these shifts, what resources and assets do you need to have at play? And that's that's strategy and an attitude that a lot of companies can't play and probably shouldn't play. If you're publicly traded leadership, I don't know how many companies can play in that space, right, and do that. But you asked how we do it. So part of it's that my background is neuroscience and consumer psychology. So I was going to be a neuroscientist, basically. And I look at these emotional components and the reasons behind why people are doing some of what they do and how to help them benefit from that over time, rather than be purely mercenary. What really will make their lives better? Some of that's just an emotional, I feel good that I bought this product. You asked about brands and, today and kind of price models and value. I don't think they're brand disloyal or retailer disloyal. Sometimes a brand is about being safe. I'll use an example because I mentioned the brand before. Levi's may not be the most fashionable, most advanced jean in the market, but you're never wrong if you put on a pair of Levi's and you go out and I do a lot of public speaking. If I go out onto a public speaking circuit and I'm wearing Levi's, it may not be the hippest, best of the moment. I'm never wrong. Okay. And there is something to be said that if I buy certain products, now this is no longer true, but there used to be an adage: if you're a technology officer at a company, buy IBM, right? Yeah. You're never wrong if and today it's like if you're going to adopt AI, use, Microsoft Copilot or OpenAI's ChatGPT, like you're not going to be wrong. Right. And there is something to be said about giving customers comfort that it's a safe choice to work with you. So part of what I look at is this. Now, we're also in a different position, Rick, in that we're multi-branded, multi-channel, multi-territory. Part of our strategy is diversity, right, versus concentration risk, and making sure in our belt business, for instance, that we have a belt for a Walmart customer who can only afford to spend $14 on a belt because it's a big part of their discretionary income for the family. And we're selling a Cole Haan belt for, $150 at in other channels. And we want younger people buying belts, and we want older people buying belts, and we want people who are fashionistas buying belts, and we want people who want traditional brown. It's going to be durable, right? So I'm looking at this mix of brands, right? I want to have Williamson-Dickie, and I want to have Calvin Klein, right, for different segments. I want to be at Costco, and I want to be at Tractor Supply, and I want to be at Nordstrom and Macy's, and I want to be at Ross Stores. So part of the strategy is risk mitigation by spreading that out and, playing that kind of mathematical odd and serving customers in a wider way. It's part of why, Walmart is attracting higher income customers right now. It's one of the things that they're modeling and playing with because they want to be more things to more people. Spread some of the risk.
Right. And by the way, it's a cultural moment we're at in the United States where the people who are gaining more income are the wealthier population. And that's where there's more disposable income. And that's where the higher gross margin products are. Yeah. And so all these things reinforce each other.
And then you look at these younger customers who are shopping, social shopping, live TV, some other media that they're using. TikTok shops growing exponentially, right? So how do you serve them? And so part of my strategy is technology will continue to allow customers to respond to what. Listen, you go back to that. I'm sorry to kind of bounce around, but I go back to that mercantile store at turn of the century. Right? You were looking at what your friends and neighbors were buying and doing. Only now you can do, you can call 600,000 people your friends and see what they're doing, right? And see it instantaneously. And with one click, you can buy what they have or something that looks like what they have. And so how do we as a company adapt to this shift and maybe even get ahead of it a little bit?
Look, you made it very clear that Randa has a reinvention mindset. We need to disrupt ourselves. Certainly, if you go back 115 years, you're not selling ties over a push cart in the Lower East Side anymore. The company's considerably more successful as a result of that. But we're not talking about tactics now. We're almost talking about culture of a firm. And
it is a culture to reevaluate the things that made us successful. We have a belief, and something I believe very strongly personally, which is one of the greatest risks when disruption happens is entrenched success in companies or leaders. If you've been historically successful as a leader and a company, when things get tough, let's go back to what we did really, really well and just do it better. If you weren't that great at that, okay, you're just going to try something new and maybe that's going to work. So you have to look at, there's an expression I use a lot, which is you can't navigate a new landscape with old maps, right? At Randa, we will look at the processes and the products and the brands and the distribution that makes us successful and then go, reevaluate whether that's truly it's going to be successful in the short and the near term, just because it was there. But like, if we were still a neckwear company, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Right.
If that was our core bit. We still do sell a lot of ties, but that's no longer driving the growth and the success of the business. And so we have this particular kind of model we use called moats, boats, and bridges. You and I have not talked about it, but I'll tell you how that works. Moats are, what do you invest in that builds your core capabilities and makes it stronger and creates barriers to entry to competitors? And this is your core business, right? Bridges are, what do you do that's adjacent using skills, brands, consumers, products, distribution that's similar to what you do, but is an extension beyond what you would normally do in that core business? And boats are transformational. They take you somewhere you've never been that may be really out there as an outlier for your particular, a big, hairy, audacious, right, goal out there, a BHAG, right? How do you look at that? And we insist that our leaders and our company reevaluate those particular elements, because when neckwear was our core business, that was our moat. And then at some point we got into belts, and it was kind of a bridge or a boat, depending upon the moment in time. Now it's part of the moat. And neckwear is more of an outlier, right? So these things change constantly. We are not locking ourselves into our success. We're willing to blow it up, right, in order to invest in something that's going to take its place. And you have to be willing to do that. It does help to have visionary leaders who look long term, okay, and you have a strong balance sheet. So those.
And I think it's not, look, you don't have to be a visionary leader to have a portfolio view of the business and how you invest capital, time, resources. You could be the same person who just sort of like, I wake up, I put on pants the same way as everyone else. I put one foot in front of the other. Like a Sam Walton, Sam Walton is a visionary, but he didn't think of himself that way.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I think you can optimize a model. It's hard to say, I'm going to keep getting better at a model that disrupts itself all the time, because even getting better at that becomes part of what you're trying to disrupt, right? So there's a self-defeating process there. But I think, maybe the word visionary is misused in my particular example. It's you've got to have vision, you have to have strategy, and you have to understand what are the real elements that make your business successful and that make customers, consumers, and or retailers gravitate to you. Why do they buy from you? I can tell you, yes, we make extraordinary, pick any, our Hager pants are great. Okay, they're an incredible price value proposition. They're terrific. But, why is a customer buying this? Are they going, oh my God, I'm going to drive 30 miles out of my way to go to a store that carries Hager pants? Maybe. But the core proposition there is, when you walk into one of the thousands of stores that carry this product, it's visually well merchandised. We're one of the few companies in our industry that hires hundreds of in-store merchandisers to replenish the product, fold it, stock it by color, by size. It's really easy to shop. It feels great. The marketing and collateral material and the signage makes it really easy to buy, right? So we come in and it's like, wow, I've never heard anything negative about this brand, so it's safe. It's right in front of me and it's easy to shop. My size and color is right in front of me. The benefits are all listed for me, right? And I'm going to buy this, and there's some brand loyalty. So I think you have to know why people don't, if I sat there and just go, oh yeah, they're going to come to my Hager pants wherever I put them, no matter how I merchandise them. Okay. We wouldn't be the market leader in that business.
You start to fool people. And I think companies can fool themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
If they
don't tell any of my Hager people that I don't think their brand is just the driving reason that people go in there, but yeah.
That's right. No, I mean, look, the number of companies that you can ask a simple question to is like, what problem do you solve for the customers you serve?
Yeah.
It's astonishing the number of people who cannot answer a simple question like that.
I'll go back to Clay Christensen. I don't think it's an innovator's dilemma, but if he would taken his class, he passed away not that long ago, but back in his day, he had this whole thing about people buy a product or a service for the job to be done. It was a thing that, right? Which is, to your point, what are you solving? What's the job? As it turned out, the reason to buy a milkshake from one of the studies he did was to avoid boredom on a 20-minute commute.
Yeah, right.
And it was easy to put in your cup holder.
I want something to do.
Right,
yeah.
a bagel's going to fall apart. And, if I have to butter something, it's while I'm driving and I'm holding it between my knees while I'm, while I got one hand on the steering wheel. He said, it's an easy way to get a little bit of a treat for a relatively, modest commute that you can just sip through, and get a little, like, you have to. That was not an easy thing for the people doing that study to determine. It took a lot of listening to customers, and it wasn't data driven.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's what problem are you solving for them, and what's the job to be done? Why are they hiring you?
And then what do you do about it is kind of get into your framework, which is sort of your moats, boats, and bridges.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic framework, not only because I think about things in the same way, is like, what are your asymmetric bets?
Yes.
What are you doing that's mainstream, where you have a high degree of certainty that if you improve these things, that these outcomes will happen. For instance, for Amazon and Walmart, that it's selection, price, and delivery speed.
Yes.
They know to the decimal point how many more sales they're going to get if they make the delivery an hour faster.
Yep, for sure.
But there are a lot of bets that they're making. For instance, Zooks and low Earth orbit satellites. They have no idea what's going to happen.
Correct. Yeah, and in some of those, you're taking an educated bet, on where you see these things headed, and you want to be there when you want to be ahead of the market or meet the market when it gets there. And are you interdependent on other systems and companies, and how do you want to have interdependence versus, a modality that you control? And, those are strategic decisions that cost a lot of money.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, we started this discussion talking about ties and pants. We ended the discussion talking about satellites. I think that's a good arc for some measure of the discussion. But this has been super fascinating. If you're a retail leader in the audience and had to take anything, I guess, from your daily life inside of Randa that you would like to impart and help kind of bring along the next generation of leaders, where would you start? Yeah,
I think that's a wonderful question for the listeners, right? To really rethink how you would look at that. And, I'd say, Rick, I'd like them to share with you and I the answer to that question. We'd love to hear and be part of that discussion. One thing I do say to our readers and say to our people here, which is, let's not seek, I keep hearing, when are things going to return to normal? Things are abnormal. When are they going to? And I go, I don't think we should be looking for a return to normal or looking for it. Normal's a benchmark. It's also a constraint. And I think if you focus on a return to normal, you miss the opportunity to reinvent a new and better future that suits where the customers, the market, the technology is headed. So don't get stuck on returning to what you used to do well. Just start a little more. It's hard to do, but start with that blank page and a new market and a fresh start, and look at it from that perspective.
I love that advice, because I think there's a lot of sort of magical if only thinking happening.
Yeah.
And you see it. Sometimes you see it in earnings calls. It's there in black and white. But dealing with the reality that's in front of you, it's a skill, and it's actually a blessing if you have leaders that are willing to confront what's in front of them rather than wish for something better.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, are you willing to blow up the thing that made you successful? I mean, certainly, Amazon kind of, they weren't the first to do it, but Kindle certainly took a big toll on the sale of physical books. It really changed that. I mean, you look at Netflix, right, and streaming and what it did to their DVD model. I mean, are you willing to do that?
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. This has been a fantastic conversation, David. I feel like I could sit here and talk with you for hours and go dive into any one of these rabbit holes that we seem to have laid for ourselves. But thank you so much for coming on. Definitely, let's do this again, or
Yeah.
catch
Rick,
up.
thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be on this podcast and to continue to be a listener. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again. This has been terrific. Thank you.